Hello, this is Granddad Stories for Gwen. I'm Stephen Chase. Today's episode, number 1, is History Book History. And the history book is this one, The History of Stark County, Illinois. This book was published in 1898, and almost all the references I give today will be based on the age of this book. And it's 115 years old today, and in general, it'll be 115 years older than Gwen. So, do the math. First thing about books is there's a saying that you can't tell a book by its cover. Here's the cover. And the cover might be totally different from the stuff inside, like this. The cover's totally loose. There's usually a repeat of the title on this edge of the book, but that's gone now. And the reason for that is that when this book was 75 years old, it was in a big fire at my parents' house. But it survived the fire, but it's a little singed at places. We'll get more into that later. This book was owned by William, and William is Gwen's great-great-great-grandfather, and he owned this copy of the book. And there are several bookmarks in it, little pieces of paper that were probably placed there by William in the first year he owned the book. He looked up things and put a bookmark in there. And these pieces of paper, also 115 years older than Gwen. And they're a little bit singed at the top. Can't see much of that. And that bookmark. Here's another bookmark where you can definitely see that the top color is a little brown rather than white of the rest of the paper. And the final bookmark, same way. A little smoke got to it, turned it brown. So you know exactly how this bookmark was placed, because only the exposed part got the smoke damage. I call that poor man's carbon dating. Those three bookmarks, for instance, cover your great-great-great-great-great uncle, your great-great-great-great-grandfather, and your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. That's what William wanted to mark. Isn't that great? William is in here too. We'll get to him later. This kind of book was a especially popular kind around 1900, in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The deal was the book company would go to an area and say, buy the book and give me your information. Buy the book in advance, give me your information, we'll add it to everybody else's information and some other history, and then you'll get a copy of the book and you'll be in it. So this was pretty popular, and about 800 people signed up like that for this book. And they had another thing where for more money, probably a lot more money, you could get your picture in the book. And 9 people did that, so about 1% of the people went for that option. And to pad out a book this thick, They also have some actual history. There's a couple of interesting things here. For instance, your great-great-great-grandmother, Lottie, was a charter member of Toulon's the Musical Institute, founded in October 4, 1876. But that's the problem. You only find that kind of thing by browsing, and there's an awful lot of stuff in here. You don't really want to read this book cover to cover unless you really expect some benefits from it. There's also some national history. I was a little surprised. They had an actual 2 pages of local details of conductors on the Great Southern and Canadian Underground Railroad. That wasn't a real railroad, it just helped transport slaves to freedom. But it's a pretty interesting account. Some of the other events in this book's history. When it was 50 years old, William and I were both alive at the same time. When it was 105 years old, I told my mother that I remembered William, and she doubted it, thought I was too young at the time. So I quoted him. He was fond of saying, "Who will know the difference in 5 years?" Somewhat like today you might say, "Don't sweat the small stuff." When I quoted him, she said, "Oh, okay, you remembered him." The other interesting thing is when this book was about 63 years old, on page, turns out that on page such and such, here's the page where William himself gave some of his details. When this book was, like I said, 63 years old, I was a student at the University of Illinois, and on short breaks, I would go from Champaign-Urbana to Toulon to visit my maternal grandparents. And I didn't have a car, so who did I get a ride with? Well, in this book, right after William, is a James, who is unrelated. All they had in common was they were both in the newspaper business. Well, the person I got a ride from was the great-grandson of this James. That's pretty cool, I think. See you next time on Granddad's Stories for Gwen.